Dan and Ben here from the Adaptability Movement and Nexus Sports Performance. This video is about the exciting time that we're in with finals for many of the winter sports coming around, and you've probably just come off a high of the Com Games if you're into that. What we really wanted to share was some different strategies that you can take into this time, given that it can be new to a lot of people. It might be stressful because of previous results or experiences in years gone by. And this is about helping you prepare in a way where you can feel a lot more confident that when you go into a situation like finals, that you can sort of remain consistent in the way that you performed all season to get yourself to this point. So Ben, I'm going to start with some personal examples first, and I was hoping to sort of get you to talk a little bit about your experience with finals footy, given that footy was a big part of your life and still is. So you're currently obviously retired from SANFL last year. You had at least the last 2 years, I believe, playing finals football with South. So maybe if you can tell us a little bit about that, and also then how that is going to shape your experience now that you're playing more socially back at Lockleys, where you've made a final series as well.
Yeah, so I guess actually throughout most of my career, I actually didn't play too many finals. In my junior career, I played a lot of finals. And then once I hit seniors, I didn't really play that many finals. I was in some teams that weren't as successful for a long period of time, unfortunately. But fortunately, in the last couple of years, I have played in some finals and some big finals at that. Last year, I played in a prelim final Friday night under lights at Adelaide Oval. Which was an amazing experience, but it was something that was completely different to what I was used to. Like playing on Adelaide Oval, I played there a number of times before, so that wasn't too much of a difference. But playing on a Friday night under lights and being the only game on was something that I'd never experienced before, and I felt the feeling was a lot different to what I'd been experiencing previously. So, last year, previous to that, we played in two finals. We won both of them unexpectedly. We weren't expected to probably win them. We'd had a not so great end to the season, and we kind of just was sort of scraping into the finals. And but fortunately, we were able to sort of come together and show up on the day and played some really good footy on those 2 days, and it was actually a lot of fun. Finals is one of those things you're always on the edge of your seat, and you know, even when you're 4 goals up with 3 minutes to go in the last quarter, you're still like, come on, we just got to get over the line. Like, even though the odds are you're probably going to win that 99 times out of 100 type thing. So, my experience with finals is that there's extra pressure. There's extra pressure if you're a player, if you're a coach, if you're an umpire, if you're a supporter. There's that extra feeling of excitement. It just brings out different sides of people in terms of there's more desperation. There's more there's greater intensity. There's everything. There's more supporters. It's just not like what your usual day-to-day week game is. So it's definitely something that it was. I remember playing my first final at Adelaide Oval. What year was it? Probably 5 years ago now. And we actually lost that game, but I remember that spurred me on to go further in footy and keep wanting to get back there because of the experience. It was such a great experience. Just the intensity of the game and the whole build up around it and everything was amazing. So it's finals. They're just different. Like I don't know, you played finals as well.
Funny. So I played a little bit of finals early in my career, like you. The first year of football, I won a grand final in football. In fact, I won it in the afternoon after the morning that I'd also played in a soccer grand final and lost. So that was interesting. Sorry, other way around. The football was in the morning, the soccer was in the afternoon.
That's probably the worst way you probably would.
It wasn't great. No. But for me, yes, it's different, but also the fundamentals are the same.
Oh yeah.
And I think this is where some people can sort of get distracted or diverted from the task at hand in that you're still playing. It could be football, it could be netball. As you mentioned, there's many different roles from umpire to player to coach to supporter. But the fundamentals of playing football stay the same.
Yep.
And so what changes is the emotional state. Mm-hmm. There's a much more heightened emotional state because of that cumulative effect of all of those different roles we spoke about and how that influences each person differently.
Yeah.
So when we talk about heightened emotional states, for some people that can come across as a threat or a risk. So there's fear involved about what might happen on the day, and usually the response to that is either fight, flight, or freeze. That won't always be immediately obvious when you get to the game or when you warm up. But when you get in it and you see players that are just different, like you look at your teammates or you look at your fellow umpire or whatever, or fellow coaching staff, and there's almost, with some people, there's almost like this vacant look. Yeah. They're the freezers. They're the ones that are just like, they're paralysed by
They've probably thought about the game 1,000 times over in their head. Like I was on the like the night before, they haven't slept. You know, on the way to the game, they're just thinking about.
Yeah.
And I suffered from that earlier in my career, and then I put in strategies to help get past that. You know, and did start to do some visualization. You know, just some different breath work techniques as well, and then also like having something like a routine that you stick to. Not something that's so rigid that it's, you know, one of those things where you're superstitious about it, but having things that, you know, you just tick the box along the way that, you know, all right, I've done that, move on to this next thing. It helps.
Well, because what we're creating is familiarity.
Yeah.
And again, so let's use an example of umpires this time. It's about, well, it's still a game of football. There's still two teams. There's still 18 players on each side of the field. Yeah, okay, the crowd might be a little bit bigger and the emotion is a little bit more intense. But what are those processes that you go through?
Yeah.
And if, like you say, if you just write that down, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it for yourself. But just know that, oh, it is familiar. And what familiarity does is it calms our nervous system. It helps us get emotionally grounded again, so we're not as vulnerable to making rash emotional responses. Never a more important time for an umpire to be emotionally grounded than a grand final when everyone else is emotionally heightened. As a player, obviously, if you want to be effective, I played during the era of the Central District's dominance. So that, you know, they won something like 8 out of 10 premierships, and we were on the tail end of a couple of those in final series. And the thing I noticed about them was their consistency. Everyone said they took it to another gear in finals. I don't necessarily think that's true. I think they were able to apply the same systems and keep the same familiarity about it themselves to be able to maintain pressure consistently. And then what that does is it leaves the opposition with their own thoughts. And that is a dangerous place to be. Because if you're not dictating the game, or you're not providing you know, a level of competition that could be perceived as a threat, well, then you end up being the one that's threatened. So I certainly was on the receiving end of that. I was one of those people that noticed the other people that were vacant. And so for me, I was probably more in the fight phase of like, no, come on, let's go. Like, you bring it in. You know, there is no right or wrong in that situation, because everyone's going to have a natural tendency. The key is you need to be able to notice that and then ground that to then be effective again.
So. And I think like with that as well, it's, you said that everyone's different. Like you don't do what someone else says works for them, because that doesn't necessarily work for you. Like everyone has all these different things that you know, different triggers or different things that, you know, help them balance themselves or whatever it is. So I think think about what worked for you in the past and go back and reflect on, like, reflection. We're huge on reflection here. Like go back and reflect on like those times that you have done well or played well or you know, made the right decisions or whatever it is. Like what were you doing in those times, and what was surrounding it? Not just the moment itself, but, you know, what surrounded it. What was your feeling like? What was your brain processing like? What was the vibe around, you know, how you were interacting with other people and all that sort of thing? It's like, what can we do to make sure that, you know, as you said, consistency is the key, because in finals especially, like momentum swings massively. Like a team can come out and just go whack straight away.
Yeah, you look at the intensity of a grand final. The first 10 minutes, like, it's the most exciting part of the game.
Exactly.
It's electric. Like there's physicality. There's enthusiasm. There's like hard hits.
Yeah, and they say you can't win a grand final in the first quarter, but you can definitely lose one in the first quarter, and that's because if you aren't at that level and you can't maintain that level, then you're not going to be anywhere near it at the end of the day. So being able to close the gap between your best and your worst on any given day is a key. So, okay, yes, you might have made one mistake or the team's, you know, doing a couple of things wrong. How quickly can you identify that, okay, we need to make a change here, or we need to, you know, make a move, or whatever it might be, to make sure that you're not just, you know, consistently doing the same thing over and over again, and then it gets, you know, a quarter or longer.
It's about being a great responder, and to be a great responder, we have to be emotionally grounded first.
Yeah.
Because if we allow ourselves to make a snap judgment, look, sometimes you'll have to trust instinct and intuition, and that's okay. But I'm talking more about like that panic. It's like, oh, under threat, got to do anything, got to do something. And that's where things usually go awry.
Yeah.
You know, coaching staff, you see it. You see a team that's been almost undefeated all season, and they get to finals, and the coach makes this outrageous move, thinking that they have to do something special.
Yeah.
And you're like, why did you do that?
No.
And they're like, oh, I just got caught up in the moment, and it was something that was game defining.
Yeah.
And you might not be the coach, could be the player, the captain. They let their emotional state impact the people around them, and that was a catalyst for it, almost being contagious to the side. So, I like what you said before. Like, do what works for you, but be a great observer.
Yeah.
People sometimes get overwhelmed by the experience because, like I said, more people, more emotion. I've found great value in going in and being like a sponge in that moment. I get excited because this is like, I think back to moments that were really memorable for me, and not just winning ones, but like ones where it was just a great experience and a privilege to be in that environment. Yeah. And it's like, I remember running out onto Amy Stadium, playing Central District in a grand final, and success-starved Glenelg supporters and that roar, I can feel it now, like the tingles running through my body. It was intense. Like, you thought Centrals were loud when they came out and then used to success, but those Glenelg supporters, that was something else.
Yeah.
Like, I felt that stadium shake.
Yeah.
No, we lost that day, but I still remember that fondly and what that meant. And because I was present in that moment, able to observe it and be like, man, that is cool. Yeah. Like, that is what I'm here for.
Yeah, and I think that, you often think about, like, people often go, oh, I can't remember the grand final, the finals, whatever, it just went by, and it is that, being able to stop and ground yourself in the moment and take everything in, because like, one thing that I did last year was before every game, before every final, like, I went out into the oval, walked around, looked around the stadium, got yourself familiar with it. Mm-hmm. It's getting familiar with your surroundings. When we ran out, I made sure to look at like people in the crowd and look around, and some people are like, you're distracted, you're not focusing on what you need to do. But no, what I was actually doing was I was taking in everything, so that nothing was a shock to me, because everything was a bit more familiar. But one thing that I did do was in the prelim final. I actually got we made a move, and I moved to a wing, and I played on a wing, which I hadn't done all year. I've been playing centre back. And played really well in the first two finals, but then through matchups got pushed to the wing, and it was one of those things that I probably did get too caught up in this new thing, and I was thinking about too much. I have to do this, I have to make sure this guy doesn't get the ball, and like I was playing on a particular player, and I got too worried about him, and then stopped worrying about what I was doing, and then before I knew it, the quarter's gone, and I hadn't even been able to touch the ball, and I was like, and then sort of caught up, and then you're like, I haven't touched the ball, now I need to get more touches, and then it starts to get that sort of cycle just starts to build and build and build.
I can feel it within you now, that energy is recreating itself, so it's a nervousness.
Yeah, whereas in the previous two finals, like, I was, from the word go, I was like, I knew what my job was, I knew what I had to do, I knew the things that I've been doing well all year that were going to hold me in good stead, and I did them really well. Yeah. But yeah, it was just in that prelim final, it was a bit of unknown that kind of probably threw me off a little bit.
So we're going to give you 3 tools to take away from today, and this is going to help you with finding your own emotional grounding in that moment, so that you can get the most out of this exciting time in your life. Mm-hmm. So the first one is bookmark moments. We talked about how do we be present, how do we ground ourselves in the moment, how do we observe, because when we observe, we can be emotionally neutral, and therefore we can sort of bring things back down and make good decisions again. So a bookmark moment is something that you do when you catch your attention, you catch your own attention, and you can recruit people. So if we're playing in the back line together in the same team, well, we can use that with each other as well. We don't have to wait for ourselves to be self-aware. Yeah. A bookmark moment is about observing. It's about noticing a moment and going, I want to remember this one. I want to come back to this. So that, for me, that was that moment with those Glenelg supporters running out into Amy Stadium, right? So you're gonna have an intention to do a bookmark moment. You're going to make a plan around familiarity. So familiarity is a great calmer of the nervous system. So it can be as simple as you like, do it your way, but go through a little bit of a system of what you would normally do and how that sort of provides comfort for you into the moment. So how that is able to sort of then make you feel.
And I was going to say, make sure you're not doing this 10 minutes for the bounce type thing.
Absolutely not.
Like do this in the week preparing for the final. So, because one thing that I used to do in terms of familiarity was I used to, the night before a game, spend 10 minutes just sitting there visualizing, not necessarily the game, but, you know, like waking up in the morning, what I was going to do, and then, you know, what I was going to have for breakfast, and then what I was going to do, you know, how I was going to get to the game, then familiarizing myself with being at the game. So, you know, whatever ground I was playing at, just walking into the ground and where I was going to walk in, you know, where the change rooms were, all that sort of stuff. So then it's almost like you rock up, it's almost like deja vu because you already played it over in your head.
For sure.
And then the morning of the game, I would do a little bit of visualization around the game, stuff that you know, when I'm playing well, that they're going really well. But then I would also visualize, you know, a couple of challenging moments, but then how I was going to get past them. So it's like, you know, oh, my players kicked a couple of goals, and okay, what am I going to do to be able to sort of combat that? So.
Yeah, because you're almost introducing that little bit of fear or anxiety that's been thrown upon you, the emotional state.
Well, it's about that.
To then practice that as well.
Yeah, so it's just about, you know, no unexpected things can happen because you've prepared everything, like good or bad. So you kind of like, okay, in this situation happens, I know what I need to do in this situation.
Throws me into the last one beautifully because what it is, it's about being adaptable and being a great responder.
Yeah.
So it's like even if there was a scenario you hadn't planned for, you hadn't experienced before, you being thrown onto the wing in the semi-final, prelim final, it's about, it's okay. Like I noticed that I'm feeling a little bit worked up. You know, maybe my familiarity isn't there right now, but I can still be a great observer and have a bookmark moment. And I can also be a great responder and be adaptable in that moment. So having the intention, no matter what happens, just trust that you'll be a great responder.
Yeah.
So we've got three things. We've got the bookmark moments, we've got the great responder, and we've got the familiarity plan. So I wish you luck. I'd love to hear some stories. If you want to comment in our feed, send us an email. That'd be great. We love sharing this time of year with people, and it's great for us to be able to observe and witness sort of other people's success or learnings in this moment. So.
Yeah.